Good morning. How are you all doing today? So we're going to move on to the next step, which is called cube roots. Now that sounds very familiar to what we did the first part of chapter 9. And you're right, it is the next step. So what is a cube root? It is that. All right, just kidding. So anyway, a cube root sign looks just like this. So it looks exactly like a square root sign, but instead of there being no number here, there is a 3. That's actually what we do with all roots. The only one where we don't have a number there is actually the square root. It's just kind of one of those understood things. So the first place you dealt with cubes was actually in volume, all right? And you're dealing with the kind of units called cubic units or units cubed. So let's say we had a cube that was 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. So what that really is, it's really 2 times the unit and 2 times the unit and then 2 times the unit. So using the commutative property, I can switch it around, which is just 2 times 2 times 2, centimeter times centimeter. So that's 2 cubed times centimeter cubed, or just 8 centimeters cubed. So today we're going to do the root of that. So again, like I said, it looks like a cube root looks like this over here. So in there you still have your radicand and you still have your radical, right? But it's just that now that there's a number there. So if you're taking a cube root, there would be a 3 there. Yes, there's more. There's an infinite number of roots you can have. You have 4th roots and 5th roots and 6th roots and all that kind of stuff. That's not till you're much older. Probably algebra 2, trig, something like that. So a cube root is just like a square root, but you take it one step further. So a square root undoes a square. Okay, so you have 2 squared is 4. The square root of 4 is 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. Well, a cube root just undoes a cube. So 2 cubed, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So the cube root of 8 is 3. So it's basically what you ask yourself, what number do I multiply by itself 3 times to get the radicand? Now today we're pretty much only going to be dealing with perfect cubes. And perfect cubes are when the cube root of the number is an integer, okay? Or not only if it's, technically it's an integer. We could also have a fraction with that where the numerator and denominator are both integers as well. So what are some perfect cubes? Okay, 1 and -1, 8 and -8, 27, -27. These are all perfect cubes. This is cube root of this is 1, cube root of this is -1. Now, because it is an odd root, right, you can have negative numbers. So a negative times a negative times a negative, 3 negatives make a negative. So you can have negative roots here. Like in square roots, you can't. Cube roots, you can. So this would be cube root of 8 is 2. Cube root of -8 is -2. Okay, 3, -3. 4, -4, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's do a little bit of solving of this. The first ones really aren't that complicated. So what times itself gives me, 3 times gives me 8? Well, the answer is 2. Okay. What times itself 3 times gives me -27? Well, -3 cubed is -27. So the cube root of -27 is -3. It's really not so bad. Let's go a little higher. Oh, a fraction. Now, if you remember, we said that there are 2 ways you can do a root of a fraction. One was to divide the numerator by the denominator. The other way was to take the individual numerators and denominators themselves and find the root of that. So this is really the cube root of 1 over the cube root of 64. Well, the cube root of 1 is 1. Okay, the cube root of 64 is 4. So the cube root of 1/64 is a 4th, because 1/4 cubed is 1/64. Oh, well, is that one a little scary? The cube root of -343. Do I expect you to know that off the top of your head? Absolutely not. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to a calculator that will help us out. Now, the calculator in Google is not as good for this one. You have to know something that's a little bit more complicated in order to understand a cube root or a 4th root. I'm not going to go into that stuff with you now. But what we can do is go into Big Ideas, and they have a calculator there to help. So I believe that is connected to your assignment, the calculator, but just in case it's not, or you're not sure how to get to it, what you can do is you can just go into the math tools. So wherever your math tools is located, remember it's located up here in the hamburger, the 3 lines. You just go to math tools. Now you can't see it right now because I'm in the way. You go to this thing called scientific calculator. And what that does is it gives you a lot more options. Here, let me put myself up here for a sec. And you notice over here it gives you other options. So you got, the squared. You can raise it to a different power. You can come up with a fraction. But here's the key right here. And it has an n in it. And what that means is that you can take any root. Remember I was saying there's a 4th root and a 5th root and so on and so forth. So that allows you to do any of them. This is only for a square root. This can do it for any of them. So we start by just simply clicking in there. And you notice we get a little blinking cursor right here. And we're going to tell it the root we want it. So we're doing cube roots. So we're going to type in a 3. And then I hit my right arrow key. And as I hit my right arrow key, now it goes into the radicand. So now I just type my number in. -343. And then I can either hit enter or I can push this little button right there. And it will give me the answer. Actually, I think it gave me the answer before that. And you can see it is -7. So you just come here, put in -7, and voila, you are done. Okay, so now this is the next one. It's a little bit more complicated. But you had done stuff like this when you was like, 2 times the square root is 16. Right? And we just said this is a multiplication problem. It's 2. And then whatever the square root of 16 is. So the square root of 16 happened to have been 4, so this is 2 times 4, which case this would be 8. This is the same thing. It is a multiplication problem. It is 2 times the cube root of -216. So what's the cube root of -216? I don't know. Go to the calculator. So let's go. All right, I'm going to press my button here. Type in my 3 to get a cube root. -216. Does it show it? Yeah, it does show it automatically. I don't even have to hit return. The answer comes up right here, -6. So this would be 2 times -6. So 2 times -6 is -12. Okay. Now we come here. Oh, a little bit more complicated. Really not that bad. So this is the cube root of 125 cubed. Well, if you guys remember, we did something like this before. The square of the square root of 4 is 4. The square of the square root of 8 is 8. Okay? If you're raising to a power a root, you're undoing it. So really what you're doing is just getting your radicand. So the cube of the cube root of 125 is just going to be 125. Now I'll prove it to you on a calculator in a minute. Add that to 21. So 125 plus 1 plus 21 is 146. Okay. Now just to prove this to you over here, let's just get a new line. So the cube root, that's not the square root, I want the cube root. 125 is 5. And if I do 5 cubed, I get 125. Okay. So it just undoes itself. Kind of fun. All right. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to solve some equations with this. Not very complicated. Just like when we did it with the squared. So if we had x squared equals 4, we took the square root of each side. And then x became, now this one became plus and minus 4. Because if x was 2, plus and minus 2, if x is 2, I get 4. If x is -2, I also get 4. Cubes, you don't get that, okay? If the number here is positive, then your variable will be positive. If this number is negative, your variable will be negative. Now, I don't write the square root sign. What I have to write is the cube root sign because we're taking the cube root of it. So the cube root of x cubed is x. Cube root of 216. If you remember from the other problem, that was just 6. Okay, if you forget, just go back to your calculator and you'll be able to calculate it. Oh my goodness, Mr. Prod, what are you doing with this question? Well, not awful. So again, this is no different than things we've done before. It's just now we have a cube here. We can still solve it. What are we doing to the variable? We're cubing it, and then we're multiplying it by -1/4. So remember, we have to get rid of what we multiply by, then you get rid of the power. So how do I get rid of something you're multiplying by? Well, you can either divide by it, or, remember, correct, you can multiply by the reciprocal. So if I multiply by -4/1 or -4, same thing, this will become 1, right? So it will become just 1n cubed. This side will become -8. So now to find what n is, I need to take the cube root of both sides. So the cube root of n cubed is n. The cube root of -8 is -2. All right, guys, good luck today. Please reach out if you have any questions. Bye.